Welcome to Q&A, Questions Need Answers. I'm your host, James Munch II. Most people know me as Munch. On this show, we talk about community, culture, and politics. And we create a space for honest conversation, community dialogue, and critical thinking. And today, I have Commissioner, former mayor of the city of Miami Gardens. You better not say Carol City. Miami Gardens. Put some respect on Miami Gardens, okay? But Commissioner District 1, County Commissioner of District 1, Oliver Gilbert.
What's up, Munch?
How you doing, man?
I'm good, man. You can say Carol City. You can even say the Bajas, because I tell people all the time, I'm from the Bajas.
Yeah.
I still live in the Bajas part of Miami Gardens. So Miami Gardens is one of those places where, you become a city in 2003, but no one actually grew up in Miami Gardens if you're my age.
Yeah.
You grew up in, you might have called it Opelika, but we all thought we lived in Opelika because our mail said Opelika. But nothing north of 151 was ever Opelika. So you live in Rolling Oaks or the Norwood or Carol City or the Bajas or Scott Park, Lake Lucerne. So you had all of these neighborhoods come together in 2003 and form the city. And so it's hard for me because when I say I was born and raised in a city that is now Miami Gardens.
Yeah.
But I grew up in the Bajas and then we moved over by Parkway and I went to Norland and it's just a thing.
I was going to ask you about that. Tell us about growing up in the Bajas, because I always had a question about how you grew up in the Bajas, but you end up going to Norland.
So this is what happens. We live in a house in the Bajas on 208 Terrace. I ended up buying the house from my parents, and so I live in the house that I lived in until I was 10 years old. When I was 10 years old, my dad we started when I was 8. He built a house right across the street from Parkway Middle School. Mm-hmm. And so it's right there on 23rd Avenue. My mom, that was his anniversary gift. He started and they built it little by little. It took like 2 or 3 years to build. My uncles but that became our family home. And then the house that was right there on in the Bajas, they turned it into a rental property. When I come back from college, graduate from law school and working, I actually buy that house from them. And so I bought the house from them that I lived in until I was 10. But that's the Bajas is where my family is from. My grandmother's, his parents, they stay on 28th Avenue and right off 207th Street. My mom's grandparents stayed on 214th, right off 32nd Avenue. My aunt stayed right next door to her. We had another uncle stay 2 blocks over. So the entire family was basically the Bajas. Mm-hmm. And the church that I went to church every Saturday and Sunday. But my dad's church was Free Will Baptist. It was in Opelika off mm-hmm. Superior. But my mom's church was Mount Pisgah. Mm-hmm. And it's right there in the Bajas. And so we would spend that was where, if school was out, I was at one of their houses. They was making me, I thought this was a delicacy when I was a kid. Banana sandwiches. Y'all ever had banana sandwiches? So it's a banana sandwich. It's 2 pieces of bread. It's banana cut and it's mayonnaise on it. Now it don't sound good, but I don't remember how it tastes exactly. But I will tell you, when we were kids, man, we used to love banana sandwiches.
That used to be
it would be great. It was something. I think it might have came from Georgia. My dad's side of the family is from Georgia. My mom's side of the family from the Bahamas, and so I think it might have came from Georgia, but it was good. So that was my summers most of the time when I was a younger kid.
Yeah, and
the Bajas, and then Parkway, and I go to Norland. FAMU, UM, education. That's what it was. But you know what? I had to remember something. I went to I think it's the Brownsville Homeowners Association. Mm-hmm. And my first school wasn't Parkview. My first school was Jackson Tolland.
What's that? Jackson
Tolland was an old time school down in and so it was like good for black. It was a black elementary school, but it's private.
Okay.
And so I went there, and I remember.
What is that? That's in.
You know what a graveyard is down there in Brownsville? It's right over there. Yeah, okay. It's right over there. But it's closed down now. I think it's closed down. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But so I remember because I remember misspelling Mississippi and them paddling me. There was basketball, and paddling was legal. Mm-hmm. And then the second school I went to was Union Academy, which is also in the Liberty City, Brownsville area. It's right across the street from Bethany Seventh-day Adventist Church. I think it's right around 54th mm-hmm. and right off 27th Avenue. And so I remember when I was going down there, I was like, man, And so I called my cousin and I was like, she was like, well, no, we all went to school there. I was like, that's right. We used to have to, and so I was younger then. And so I must have been like kindergarten and first at Union or second, at Jackson Tyler Lynn, and just second and third or third and fourth at Union. So I would catch the bus with my older cousins, and they were responsible for getting me to and from school. So we all went to the same schools.
So you got some Liberty City roots, is what you're saying.
I did. Listen, it was, and I remember there was a person out there, they used to sell hot sausages, but they also sold pickles and Kool-Aid. And what you do is you take the pickle and you buy the Kool-Aid, you dip it in there and you squeeze it around, and you like now that I think about some of these things, we really put a lot of crap in our bodies when we were young. I would not suggest any of this to anyone. Like, we would take the Jamaican patties they sell, and we would buy a Snickers bar or a Milky Way bar. And if you take a warm Jamaican patty and you put a Milky Way bar on it and you eat it, man, you'd be surprised how good that tastes. I'm telling you, it's a fat man stuff. It's some fat man stuff right here. It's some fat man stuff.
Back in your past life, because I ain't never heard of some of these mixes.
My wife don't let me bring
hot sausage and Kool-Aid. I remember hot sausage and salt and vinegar bag.
No.
Okay, so he vouching for it. It was a thing back.
The hot sausage and pickle. Yeah, no, this is a thing. Like, and you had to heard of this.
Hot sausage and what?
Pickle. No, pickle and Kool-Aid.
Pickle and Kool-Aid. Okay, I heard of that one. Pickle and
Kool-Aid. You had to heard of that.
Okay.
Now, come on.
Okay.
Now. But none of that stuff was good for us.
No,
it
wasn't. It was
man.
the most horrible thing.
Hot sausages should be illegal. Yeah. Like, this, what go in hot sausages is nothing it never should go in your body at this point. I understand that. My wife, she's vegetarian. She don't even let me bring like Snickers bars in the house at this point. So it's fine. It is what it is.
So talk about, your journey into like public service. Cause we talk about like, we know you went to FAM, right?
Yeah.
And then you went to UM Law, cause you talk about it a lot. Mm-hmm. But what was that journey in between from UM Law to public service to,
I graduated from law school. I'd done well in law school. Taking the bar, passed the bar, did well in the bar. I wasn't particularly looking for a job. And now that I think about it, I was in here when you were interviewing Angie for a little bit, and she was talking about everybody needs therapy. I think I was mentally exhausted. I didn't really have the vocabulary or the understanding to be able to say that back then. To articulate that. But it had been a fairly stressful journey because, when I started law school, I actually started my law school at St. Thomas. I started law school in St. Thomas. The dean told me that I asked her about law review and I asked her about moot court. And she said, well, those are academic honors. And you should just worry about graduating or not failing out, because most of our black students fell out after the first semester. Mm-hmm. And so, I had never had anybody talk to me that way. I was like, wow, that's crazy. I was like, well, it was my understanding that the bottom third of every class is not asked to return. She said, that's correct. I said, well, I've never been in the bottom third of anything in my life. So I'm not going to start with this law school. So after the first year, I really felt that pressure. I go and I do well. I'm on the dean's list. And I transferred to the University of Miami. And so, but it was every morning getting up, taking the bus, taking the Metro Rail, every day, staying down there the entire time, working, the pressure of being in law school. We don't talk about it a lot, but it's not necessarily a lot of us in law school. And the pressure to do well and excel, because you never feel like you're just representing you. We don't necessarily have the privilege of just representing us. We're always representing our families. We're always representing our community. We're always, in some instances, representing our entire race. When a black person mess up, it's for everybody. Mm-hmm. And so working, always having that pressure. My family had always said, hey, listen, you got to do well, whatever you do. Just the pressure of it. When I finally graduated, when I finally passed the bar, I was mentally exhausted. So I wasn't really doing much. And I didn't even apply for any jobs. And I go to this just when they started robocalls. And somebody was running for, T. Holloway was running for state representative. And my only job, according to my parents, was to answer every phone in the house. And you got to understand, it was 5 of us in the house, and there were 5 lines. So every day, everybody would take their, I don't even know if they still have house phones anymore, but they take the cordless phones and they sit it in my room next to my bed. And I would get up, I take my shower, eat breakfast, I play video games. I was just really chilling, but that phone started ringing with those robocalls, and they would call every number. And so I would keep answering. And one day I was like, you know what? I'm just going to walk down to this guy's office. His office was at the old store that had been a liquor store on 22nd Avenue and 167th Street, right there across the street from New Way. And so I walked down there and said, hey, listen, these are our phone numbers. If you take our phone numbers off your list, I promise you, I can get you the votes in my house, but our family votes on a list. So, and I'm the person who makes the list. So I'm not just getting you like the 4 or 5 votes in this house. What I'm gonna get you is like 60 or 70 votes. You got 60 or 70 votes if you don't call these numbers ever again. And they ain't calling numbers no more. But the person who was down there, she started talking to me, and she's like, well, you have a law degree? And I started, answering questions, whatever. After the elections had passed, she calls me and she says, I'm working with this other state representative. I think that are you still just doing nothing? I said, I'm pretty good just doing nothing. And she said, well, why don't you come and meet with her, and you might want to, look for a job with her as legislative aide. I met with her, we spoke, we talked, we had a long conversation. It was Dorothy Bendros Mendengal. She ends up hiring me as her legislative aide. 2 years later, I get a call from Janet Reno. She's running for governor. And she says, they tell me you're really bright. I want you to come write policy for me when I run for governor. And I started writing policy for Janet Reno. I lead representative, I go start writing policy for Janet Reno. Janet loses. I go be a prosecutor in Broward County, but Miami Gardens becomes a city in 2003. I run for city council, I lose. I lost to Oscar Brainerd. I remember I raised like $19,000. It was crazy. Oscar raised like $120,000. So, but I made the runoff. It was a tough race, but I wasn't like, okay, I lost. I called him that night, hey, listen, good campaign. If there's anything I can do to help, let me know. From that point on, I went to every Miami Gardens City Council meeting. And I didn't go like people come now, they go, they bitter. I went, I was supportive of the council, volunteered, supported the city, because I really did need and want the city to do well. Support the city, support all of them. Oscar goes to the legislature when T. Holloway comes to the school board. Yeah. And he writes a letter saying, hey, I think you all should appoint him to this seat. They appoint me to the seat that I initially ran for. And I run and subsequently win election for the seat, I think in 2010. In 2012, the initial mayor, Shirley Gibson, she's terming off, and all these people are running for mayor. And I didn't particularly like any of them for mayor. And so I decided I was going to run for mayor. At that time, I was practicing law, just making money, just doing my thing. But I said, I'm going to run for mayor. I run for mayor. I'm not the favorite. I end up getting like 63% of the vote with like 6 people in the race. And so begins, the idea of how we actually transform a community. During that election, what I did was walk around and talk to people about what we wanted, because everybody was moving, right? They were moving. And I kept telling people, don't move. Like, just build where you want to be. Don't move. Y'all moving out to West Miramar in houses that y'all ain't gonna be able to afford in 3 years. Just wait, it's coming. There are things that you can do here. It doesn't have to be or exist this way. And so that was the conversation that led to me becoming mayor. And I spent the next 8 years trying to just effectuate everything I talked to the residents about.
At that time, you left it out, but at that time, Miami Gardens, even though it just started, that wasn't the best of times.
Oh no, it was horrible.
And we talk about the crime was up.
Yeah.
A lot was going on.
It was murder gardens. They called it,
and they still mad at you to this day about Caramart.
They're mad at me. Listen, it is the height of irony that the parks were closed. I remember when we had like was it 10 or 11 murders in 10 days or 11, it was an awful streak. One of the most dangerous cities in the country. No businesses were opening. Infrastructure in disrepair. And when I started talking about what we're going to do to address these issues, and I said, hey, we're going to be an all-American city. We're going to win this designation. People thought I was out of my mind. But I could see how it could be done. It wasn't, people said that, no one wants to open businesses here. And so when I started talking to people, like, there were people who did want to open businesses. Black people, like everybody wanted to open business here, but it was so hard. Mm-hmm. Like the permitting system was hard and the zoning wasn't right. So we had commercial corridors, and on commercial corridors where you would think it would be zoned to allow for businesses, what we had it was zoned for residential.
Okay.
And so what I noted is that happens in a lot of Black communities in major commercial corridors. You see it a lot of ways along 22nd Avenue too. Mm-hmm. Now in non-Black communities, and it might be just how we developed it, might be how the county, because a lot of these areas were unincorporated, Miami Gardens was unincorporated. Yes. Commercial corridors should be zoned commercial. Mm-hmm. You need businesses along commercial corridors. You need that because you need to have commercial and economic activity in your community. You can't just have a community full of single family homes and expect the tax burden to be enough to actually sustain services for people who are cities over 100,000. Not unless the value of those homes is so extremely high that you don't need to have businesses, and it's just not there.
Talk about that tax burden and how that works. Like, if you could educate us in the simplest way about that, because
it's hard, right? Because it's hard, but it's simple. So everybody wants a community that has stuff in it, but no one wants to actually change zoning laws. When I looked at how cities were structured, when I looked at things like what required very little services but yielded the most tax revenue at a specific millage. And so what you know is if you have a whole bunch of single family homes, along your corridors, you need to have density. You need to have market rate density. Mm-hmm. You also need to have commercial, you need to, in other parts, you need to have industrial. So when you see Miami Gardens have those big industrial parks on the peripheries of the city, we did that and we allowed that because first it creates jobs, it brings people in the community, it creates economic activity, but also it generates taxes. You can use those taxes to actually provide services for kids and seniors. Because kids don't pay taxes, and because of the value of their homes, a lot of the seniors in Miami Gardens weren't paying particularly a lot of taxes. Mm-hmm. So the tax burden was all on the working, middle class, middle-aged people. And so you needed to generate other tax revenue. Now, the largest taxpayer in Miami Gardens is the stadium. Mm-hmm. And their taxes has gone up disproportionately. But the reason why their taxes go up disproportionately is not because they added in size, but because they added in activity. What most folks don't understand is when you have a stadium, you're not taxed basically just on the size of the property. The size of the property doesn't change. You're taxed on the amount of activity that comes to the property and the amount of revenue that the property generates. So when they started doing concerts and stuff, then the taxes they paid the city went up. Mm-hmm. And it became a more important component of the city when I become mayor, because before I was mayor, Miami Gardens didn't have control of zoning or code enforcement around the stadium. Yeah. And so one of the things that I do when I become mayor is I initiated a lawsuit against the county and the city saying, hey, you all incorporated a city with their biggest corporate resident. They don't have, where y'all do that at? That's not something that should have been allowed. So I sued. And we had this joint meeting with the county commission.
So you sued, hold on. So just so you sued the city of Miami Gardens?
No, I sued the county and the Miami Dolphins.
Okay.
Yeah, for the city. Yeah. It's on behalf of the city. And so we have this joint meeting, and I remember the joint meeting well because it's the first time I'd actually encountered all the county commissioners at the same time. And I had already told the county attorney's office, who we're all cool now, but they didn't like me back then, that, hey, listen, if we get in this joint meeting, I'm going to tear y'all up. Like the law is not on your side. And so we got in that joint meeting. All I remember is Pepe Diaz, who was the former chair of the board, and now he's the mayor of Sweetwater, throwing up his hands. He's like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to do it. Just listen, just do it. Give it to them. Just give it to them. And walking out. And I don't want to do these meetings anymore. Because it was so extraordinarily unfair, unreasonable. And what my argument was illegal. Forget fairness. I'm arguing the law here. because my training as a lawyer was actually representing cities in federal courts when they were being sued. So I was real familiar with what the law required. And so I make the argument and I win. And that not only allows us to get the tax revenue, but now the permitting, we got the tax revenue. We're already getting the tax revenue, but now you get the tax revenue and you get all the code enforcement, you get all of the building, you get all the permitting, you get all that stuff also.
Okay, so explain the code and the building and all that.
So code enforcement and building and permitting services are in things that they call proprietary funds. Those funds do not go into the general fund. Those funds go to actually just support the services. So if you're doing permitting, when you go to pull a permit, you go to pull a permit for the store, right? And so you go pull a permit for the store, and they'll charge you, if they charge you $300, the fee of the permit is supposed to be directly linked to how much it costs to provide the service, with some built-in cushion, like whatever the debt is for the system and all that stuff. Well, in Miami Gardens, what had happened was, because our permitting department, there was nobody building anything, but we still had to employ people. The permitting department, the building department, they were borrowing money from the general fund. And so when I did that, we were able to stop them from borrowing money from the general fund and start to repay the general fund. Okay. The general fund is how you get parks, senior services, and police officers. So it goes directly into how I start to provide services and build the reserves for the city, because when I become mayor, we only have like a 7 or 8% reserve. When I leave in 2020, we have a 47% reserve. Now, if you have a 20% reserve, it's considered great. I wanted us to have a 47% because I had heard the things that they had said about cities like Opelika and all these. Like, if you were a black city and you weren't strong financially, they talk crap about you. I never wanted to be that. I never wanted people to believe that we were this poor black city. Miami Gardens is not a poor black city, but working people live there. Working people live there. They get up every day. They go to work. It's a struggle. We have the same problems that other working class, middle class cities have. And so it's just a matter of us understanding that. And so I used to have that conversation, when they had that moniker, Murder Gardens. I remember talking to the residents. I said, well, who do you think they're talking about? They're not talking about the streets. They ain't talking about the bridges. They're talking about you. They're saying that you and I, that we're criminals. Now, are you a criminal? Because I understand you to be a teacher. Are you? No, they're identifying something that's happening with a very small percentage of this community. And they're extrapolating it out to the broader community. And when we actually perpetuate that, when we repeat it, what we're doing is we're spreading the oppressor's message. I don't subscribe to that. No other community tells their worst story. But we are fond of doing that in the black community. We'll tell our worst story, and we will make it all of us all the time. And I don't think it's good public policy. Also, I just don't think it's something that actually represents us. Because the people I knew in Miami Gardens, I had grown up in that area, most people, the vast, overwhelming majority of people, these folks, they aren't criminals, they aren't murderers. They have no part in that stuff. They just want to do their thing, have their house, hang out with their friends, go to their church, go to work. That's all they really want to do. And so just understanding who they were, what they wanted, and who they weren't, helps to start actually turn the tide. And, creating departments in the city like the Department of Civic Engagement with the whole intent of just going out there and engaging people on voting, engaging people on what was going on in the country, engaging people on the city and services that we were providing. It was helpful also.
Yeah, because, you got one of the most engaged residents, populations,
Yes.
that I've seen, you know what I'm saying?
Well, but much a part of that was, I remember when like the Miami Herald and Channel 7, like we couldn't catch a break. If something happened on I-95 and 199 and it was a murder, it was Miami Gardens. If something happened on Miami Gardens Drive and 87th Avenue, it was in Miami Gardens. I was like, well, but if something good happened. Now, when something good happened, it was Northwest 8.
Yeah.
It was Northwest or Miami.
Yeah.
And so, I remember it was at a point, man, I was having like monthly meetings with the editorial board. And I had a whole person whose only job was basically to document their inaccuracies and taking those notebooks in. So you said this, these are the actual facts. You said this is where it actually was. Until they actually ended up hiring a reporter, and that reporter ended up doing just essentially Black Miami. And I think they probably phased that out because their industry is in, kind of decline. But it was helpful because we started to get more accurate reporting. Yeah. And then my theory then was like, listen, if you only report the bad things, then the bad things are the only things that happen. So if you're going to report the bad things, I'm not telling you not to report news. What I'm saying is, it's incumbent on you as the paper of record to have kind of a little bit of fairness, to be actually fair. So this bad happened, but this also good happened. So you have to actually report both those things. You don't report both those things. You're actually saying to people, all that happens here is this. And that's something that really doesn't work for me as mayor, doesn't work for us as residents. And so we work on that time and time again. And it takes root and stuff starts to change a little bit.
Take me through, at one point, the whole situation with that I'm aware of is with Wells Fargo.
Yeah, I sued Wells Fargo too. I sued Wells Fargo too because when Wells Fargo was entering, if you were, and it's interesting because people think, well, they think that if the Wells Fargo lawsuit was about whether the borrower was Black, it wasn't. It was about where they were wanting to buy property. So if you were a person who wanted to buy property in Miami Gardens, they gave you a loan instrument that was predestined to fail. Even if you had the same credit, the same money, like if you want to buy, if you had your down payment of 20% and you had a 790 credit and you want to buy a property in Miami Gardens, you got a different interest rate with balloon payments. If you got the same property in Miami Lakes, it was something completely different. And so when we start to look at it, we realize that, well, there's a disproportionate number of foreclosures here, but these loan instruments are crazy. The loan instruments they're writing here are crazy. And so it was a version of the redlining, like where they would and wouldn't loan money to. We think they just stopped. They didn't stop. They just evolved it. They made it so disproportionately bad that if you did it, that now here you're in this area, you have all of these foreclosures. So we become, a city in 2003, and then I get on the council in 2008, right in the middle of the housing stuff. In 2012, we're still trying to recover. And we're looking at it, it's like, well, hey, what about this? And these folks who have this lawsuit, they said, well, I'd seen them, I think, at a League of Cities or something. And I said, well, why don't you come and look at this? And we end up filing a lawsuit against Wells Fargo because what they did in Miami Gardens caused substantial harm. I think the lawsuit, I think it settled after I left, but I think the lawsuit ended up settling for properties and stuff like that and special loan stuff. But it was one of those things that it was always big for me to actually stand up for Miami Gardens. One of the things I felt, and it's kind of a generational thing. So the generation before me, they were the establishers. They were the freedom fighters. They were the people who got the initial right, but they weren't necessarily the folks who wanted to make the legal argument from a policy perspective that this was wrong. That fell to my generation. Like, well, we're going to do this. Like, we are going to, you all told us to do right. Yeah. You said go to law school, okay, now I know. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to fight. And so you see that with Wells Fargo. We sued them. We end up suing the city of North Miami Beach over the water issue. Like we sue the county. We sue the Dolphins. We establish ourselves in a way that says that we won't be pushed around. And so a lot of times now when I hear folks talking about what happened in those 8 years, and they acknowledge the turnaround, but they don't acknowledge necessarily just the strength and the fortitude and the just will to not give up that it took to do it, because it's not like all the residents were on our side either. When we do this stuff, Munch, listen, when we start changing the zoning, when we got rid of the flea market, when we had the entertainment overlay zoning, when we sued North Miami Beach, there was always people there to criticize. There were always people who said, listen, when we got Topgolf, people came and said that was ridiculous, we don't need this, They wanted it to be a truck stop.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, well, no, we're going to go ahead and do Topgolf anyway. And so now they enjoy Topgolf.
Yeah.
So it just takes the courage to actually do something that you know is right, have a good reason, and see it through. Just see it through.
What's a lesson you learned while you were, and I don't want to say categorize it as a misstep, but something that you had to learn from while running the city, or just as a councilor? Listen,
somebody asked me this question. I got that question for the first time yesterday at the forum. And ironically, it's the same type of thing. So I was the person who was speaking at the funerals when those homicides happened. I was the person who was consoling the parents. I was the person who was charged with fixing it. And so in the context of fixing and turning around the city, I didn't take a lot of time to actually explain what I was doing and why I was doing it. I got me a good team around me, and I just moved.
Mm-hmm.
So it creates the impression. Well, first of all, now you have problems that were solved, but people don't know what was done to actually solve them. So just systemically, when you want to try to create systemic success, that's not a good model to have. That's the first thing. The second thing is my impatience always rubbed people the wrong way. But I don't think that they necessarily understood the pressure I was under. And I didn't understand the need to actually walk them through it. So, because some of the things just seemed like, oh yeah, you want to stop crime and y'all telling me to hire more police. Well, I'm going to hire some police, but what I'm going to do is open these parks too. And I'm going to put this $1 million into programming these parks too. So now, because I see the spike in crime, it's between 3 o'clock and 7 o'clock. Well, what happens between 3 o'clock and 7 o'clock every day, Monday through Friday? Oh, kids get out of school and parents are still at work. Mm-hmm. So what if we had after school programs? What if we put more money in youth football and cheer? What if we had all of these other things that occupy these kids? Then you could actually take those officers who are patrolling for silly little property crimes of opportunities, and you can dedicate them to the other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I do stuff like that. I wasn't trying to solve problems in traditional ways, and people didn't necessarily understand what I was doing. I remember the example of a gas station that was on the corner. It was an empty lot though, on the corner of 183rd Street and 37th Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
It was an empty lot for a while, right by those apartments right there.
Yeah.
And so you had shootings at at the apartments and on that corner. People were selling drugs off that corner. So when the people came to actually said they wanted to build a gas station there, the residents didn't want, we don't need another gas station. I'm thinking to myself, we don't really need another gas station. But they already own the property now, right? And if the gas station is there, and you put these criteria for what you want the gas station to look like. So now it's lit, they got cameras, it's on 24 hours a day. If they're there, what's not gonna be there? It's the drug dealing and the killings and the shootings.
Mm-hmm.
And so I used parks and economic development in a lot of different spaces in the city to actually transform stuff, but I didn't explain that when I was doing that. And if I had, if I could give the advice to any mayor, around the country facing the same thing, don't necessarily do anything different. Explain it better. Definitely explain it better.
So that would be the thing, is explain it better.
Yeah, explain it better.
Talk about, let's shift gears to economic development.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to development, a lot of times you see like the residents come down to City Hall, they may not want something, or you know what I'm saying? Explain how you kind of like maneuver through that. You know what I'm saying?
It depends.
Because the way I feel is sometimes it may be something bad, but it may be something good down the line.
It's often that. And so there are two things. First, it depends on what's happening. So if someone's coming and they want to build something and it's zoning means it's quasi-judicial. So let me explain what that means to folks. So when I say zoning being quasi-judicial, that means we don't get to just decide based on what we think is right or what we like. Most instances that come before elected daises, people get to just decide, well, I like this versus this. When you're in zoning, you can't do that. When you're in zoning, you have to go by what they call competent substantial evidence. Otherwise, they can sue you and you have to do it anyway and you have to pay their attorney's fees. So if we're in zoning, what I do is I listen for what the residents want and try to reconcile it with what they're proposing. That's the first thing. Well, the first thing is deciding whether I think it's a good thing in the area. But if the residents don't want it, if the residents do want it, and what the developer, what they're proposing, try to reconcile those two things. If you can't reconcile those two things, then what you have to do, and you think you're going to deny it, you have to have competent, substantial evidence. Otherwise, you just get reversed in court. But then you also have to have the understanding that people don't like change. Because they don't like change, what happens is they're predisposed to say no to things. You have to have the confidence that you can actually explain it to people and that it's going to end up being a good thing. You also have to, like, and this is going to sound like no one wants to say this, but when you're elected mayor of Miami Gardens, you're elected mayor, what is it, 115, 120,000 people. There might be 20 people who come to a city council meeting and say they don't want something. Your job is not to listen to those 20 people and do what they say. Your job is to listen to those 20 people. You listen to them, but ultimately your job is to act in the best interest of everyone in the city. Because the type of government we have doesn't require residents to come to city council meetings. They should be able to trust you, the things that you say at your judgment, so that they elected somebody to make this decision. 20 people may come and they may be against it, but it might be 20,000 that's in favor of it. You really have to be secure in yourself, and you have to be secure in the message and the things in the communications that you've had with the public in general, the electorate in general. And I was always really confident in those things. And so I always had the understanding that I'm going to make the best decision I can. It's in the best interest of the city that I can. And then I'm willing to explain any of these choices. I'll explain this choice. I can explain my votes. If you give me the information, I'll tell you, oh, this is why I voted for this. Oh, no, this is why I voted for this. This is how I saw this. Was everything right? I don't know. Right is relative. But I know that I made the best decisions that came before me based on the information that I had. And that's the type of, thing that you just gotta lay your head down on that at night. That's what it is,
All right, so let's transition to you going to the county. What were the priorities? What were the priorities, and what shifted from you being the mayor to then being the county commissioner?
People didn't understand that I wasn't the mayor anymore. They still don't. They'll still come to me and ask me and to do stuff with the city. And so they didn't understand that I wasn't the mayor anymore. So I just absorbed, all of their concerns from Miami Gardens, and then Opelika, and then Country Club of Miami, and then California Club. And the perspective changed because the city's budget was like a little over 100 million, 120 million. The county's budget is 13 billion. Yeah. So it's a significant thing. And so finding ways to actually make sure things actually happen in our district. And one of the things that I had noted was I just didn't feel like we got our fair share of stuff. Like the county didn't have infrastructure in Miami Gardens or in the north part of the county or in Opelika. And so when I first got there, the needs assessment was, what do we need? So I kind of knew what we needed in Miami Gardens, what they need in Opelika, what do you need in Country Club, what do you need in California Club? What do you need? In California Club, they needed stuff related to some open space, but a lot of traffic stuff. They needed that type of mitigation done. In Country Club of Miami, they had been promised renovations of the park, the county park / golf course over there. For a long time, it hadn't gotten done. They couldn't build consensus. There were some other infrastructure needs. And then in Opelika, they were laden with debt, but a lot of their debt was to the county. What could I do to actually help them? How could I support them in getting them from under that type of debt? And so in Miami Gardens, the Performing Arts Center, stuff like that. And then in pockets, I saw general needs like septic tanks and things like that. How can we be benefits? And so we started designing programs around all of that and financial models around all of that. And we ended up working with Opelika. I'm not even sure they knew it was happening until it was over with, but we changed their debt structure. So everything, they had been paying faithfully, but they had just been paying the interest. So the principal debt still stayed there. So what I did was, the law didn't allow me to actually embrace the principal, but it didn't say anything about the interest. So I took the interest and I said, well, this is what I want to do. I want to apply every interest payment they made as their principal. So when I do that, that immediately erases $500,000. But it also cuts down the time that it takes them to finish the loan.
Yeah.
So they would have finished in 2028, they finished in 2024. So when you see the city doing better, the city's doing better because they're not saddled by debt anymore. They can do better. In Miami Gardens, we've been trying to build a performing arts center. I incorporated a CRA just to build a performing arts center because we don't have a space like that. We need a space like that to be the center of what's going to be a town center in Miami Gardens. I sent $25 million to Miami Gardens from the county and an investment to actually build that performing arts center. And so and I think they're actually turning dirt out there now. So that's helpful.
Yeah.
We start the project in Country Club, and we start the projects for the streets and the infrastructure in California Club. And then I start this pet project. I realized that Biscayne Bay, the number one corruptor of Biscayne Bay is faulty septic tanks, and a number of them are in District 1. So we start a project where we will come in and we will replace your septic tank for free. All you got to do is find the waivers. We'll connect you to the line. And so we started doing those projects, and we just started working at it. And because what I had seen in the past that our county, our part of the county hadn't got resources. And so I wanted to bring resources here. And to a large extent, it actually worked.
So why now that you running for, Congress?
Well, I mean, Frederica decided not to run for re-election, decided to retire from Congress and not seek re-election. And listen, Munch, it's crazy out there right now. Mm-hmm. Like we think about the things that's crazy that's affecting us. I think about the things that's crazy in the context of history. Mm-hmm. Like in the context of history, you can't keep growing the people who are impoverished, who live in poverty, and having people who are this wealthy control everything. Eventually that leads to revolution. That's actually what's happened. That's what history tells us. Mm-hmm. You can't be in the richest country in the world and be afraid to go to the doctor, not be able to afford food, not be able to afford some place to live, not feel like there's hope. Well, one of the things that President Obama did when he ran was he centralized the concept of hope. And people, later would criticize, hope. Hope is a natural and necessary ingredient. People have to be able to believe that they can actually change their life. Mm-hmm. If not, if everybody just start living for the day, you don't want to live in that country. Mm-hmm. You want to do that. I saw things in Washington and to a certain extent Tallahassee about how everybody was just yelling at each other. And no one was trying to solve the problem. And everybody wanted their perfect fix. It was either this or it was that. Well, one of the things that I did at the county and at Miami Gardens is I figured out things that nobody was necessarily overly happy with, but actually helped people. Mm-hmm. Like for instance, nationally, I talk about healthcare. Look, I would love to have Medicare for all. Mm-hmm. I would vote for Medicare for all, but Medicare for all has failed several times. Like they can't get it passed. Well, if we can't get it passed, what can we still do something to get people coverage? Well, sure there is. We could actually lower the age requirement for you entering Medicare to 55, and we could raise the income requirements for Medicaid so we can stop making people choose between work and having access to health insurance. Okay. Because it's a stupid choice. Mm-hmm. Like, why would you want somebody to make that choice? Why wouldn't you want them?
They complain folks on welfare or taking advantage of the system.
But that's the way the system's built. Mm-hmm. Why not just build a system to still incentivize you working with the understanding that healthcare is a right, and we wouldn't take that away from you? Look, it's because we don't actually want to solve the problem, and we want to think that we know the other. Like, they want to call us poor, and we want to call them rich, and no one wants to just. Everybody needs healthcare. Remember when they had the government shutdown some months back? I was watching the news, and I think I might even save the clip because it was this clip of people standing in line for food, in a food line, so the people were all white, and it was all in like a Midwest kind of state. And so it was interesting because I wanted to show people that because people sometimes have an idea of who recipients of public service and public funds are. Mm-hmm. And hunger does not know race. Mm-hmm. Poverty does not know race. A need for insurance does not know race. They want us to think it does. And they want to tell that story to their voters. They want to tell that story because they can stop somebody from wanting to give it to us because, oh, you don't want to give it to us. You got to remember, you're not giving it to us, you're giving it to yourself. We've been asking people in America for far too long to be selfless. We could be fine if they were just selfish. Just vote in your own interests. Vote in your economic interests. Vote to give yourself health care. These are the systems under this requirement. If you make less than this, then less than this, you can apply for Medicaid. You do it for you and we get it too. I'm cool with that. I'm not trying to change your heart. I'm trying to make you use some common sense. You need health care like we need health care in every part of this country. Your wife needs to be able to go to the doctor so that she needs to be able to tell whether that lump is cancer or is nothing. Mm-hmm. Everybody needs that. So why don't we just provide for those things that everybody needs? Why don't we design housing and options that people can afford? Well, why don't we predicate our education system on how we actually move people into a place where they don't have to be in poverty all their life? And why don't we design the SBA to target specific areas and not just programming generally? Listen, if you have areas that have been replete with poverty for decades, the way you break the cycle of poverty is investing in small businesses in those areas. Stop coming to, like, one of my pet peeves is when people run for election, all they do is talk about jobs. They will come and talk about jobs. I want everybody to have a job if they want to have a job. I want us in our community to start opening businesses. I want us to have access to SBA, 504, 78. I want us to have access to those programs that allow you to buy capital, startup, first loss programs. I want us to have programs that gives grants and no interest loans. I want us to do that because ultimately we're not going to break the cycle of poverty in these areas if we don't actually start to build wealth in these areas. That means home ownership and small businesses. But no one's having that real conversation with us. Mm-hmm. They're talking to us about social programs, and social programs are the now answer. What's the next answer?
Yeah, long
What's
term.
the answer for next? Look, I don't want our kids having the same problems that we have. That would be generational failure. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I note about Miami Gardens is people will say I'm this, say I'm that. Well, say whatever you want to. Because of my leadership, the city looked different when I left. The city operated different when I left. Mm-hmm. The city had more reserves when I left. There ought to be a visible sign that you were there. Mm-hmm. If we as a generation are here as leaders, and it's not just in the Black community, but in this country, and our children inherit the same problem, what use were we? I don't want our kids to have these same problems. I want an education system that listen, we'll invest from the federal government, if I'm in Congress, in education systems that will design a curriculum that allows you to actually graduate career ready, college ready, life ready. Career ready. Not everybody wants to go to college. Not everything that's successful requires a college degree. Listen, if you will graduate them with a program with a certificate to be an electrician, we'll give you extra money from the federal government. Pipe fitters, extra money from the federal government. Plumbers, find the fields that we need, that you don't need to go to college for, and have them do the training. Mm-hmm. If they don't want to go to college. That's not, but then also invest in systems that are going to allow us to be the curators and the architects of the next economy. So your physics, your biomedicines, all your text fields, your maths, invest in that stuff. You can do those things. We can create the system that actually produces people who are driving the economy, not just here locally, not just in this country, but all over this world. We can do that. Why wouldn't we then? Why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we look at college education and understand the schools like FAMU and Bethune-Cookman and Florida Memorial and Miami-Dade College and FIU, schools that are targeting areas and groups that haven't previously been focused on for education, why wouldn't we give them extra money? Mm-hmm. But because again, that's helping to end cycles of poverty. We have a system right now that's designed to recreate itself. And fundamentally, that's the problem. And so we can change that. It might not be in big swings. It might be incrementally aggregating change, little pieces of change, but we have to do it. And so I think one of the challenges to the national conversation is we've gotten in this place where it's either or, and no one can get enough votes to do either or. And so we don't do anything. Mm-hmm. And so not doing anything is a problem because this system recreating itself does not benefit us. And I would argue to other folks, it doesn't benefit their kids either. If you're in the Appalachians and you don't have a discernible future for your kids, you got the same problems that we have in Opelika. Mm-hmm. You got the same problems we got in Miami Gardens and Liberty City. You got the same problems. They got the same problems. Mm-hmm. They tell them it's different because they're different colors. It's the same problem. I sit down, I look at policies, and I try to figure out what are solutions that we can actually get done and will actually make a difference. That's what I did in Miami Gardens. That's what I did at the county. And I want to do that in Congress.
I want to pick your brain on something.
Sure.
Because we know you. Affordability.
Mm-hmm.
What's your view on that?
I mean,
because you talked about SBA and the other things, but
it's
because it's like been a buzzword, but it's like nobody actually has the how we're gonna actually get there.
So the one thing that people don't talk about affordability. Like we can talk about tariffs. I'll talk about tariffs. How the president has all these illegal tariffs. We need to cut that out. We'll talk about oil. People think about oil and gas. Oil, the oil's main contributor to inaffordability is not just gas. Sure, everything has to be transported, but oil is actually used to produce most things that have plastic in it too. So you need it for manufacturing. Mm-hmm. And so the cost of oil will affect it, the oil market will affect affordability generally. The other side of affordability that we aren't talking about is not just the prices of things go up, like healthcare goes up, housing goes up, groceries go up, but wages don't go up.
Yeah.
It's the wages part. No one wants to say that, what is it, $7.25, whatever the federal minimum wage is, needs to be raised. No one wants to say that we start having these affordability problems when they started gutting unions. We started having healthcare problems and coverage problems when they started gutting unions. Because unions went out there and they fought for rights that didn't just inure to unions. Not only the union workers got them. So they fought for wages that dictated the entire wage market. So we start to get wage stagnation when they were able to start to kill organized labor. In the real world, we actually need organized labor. The strength of organized labor is a strength of people to aggregate their individuality into collective action and motion. Mm-hmm. Companies like Walmart might not listen to one person, one worker. They can fire one person, two workers, three. But if we were all organized, it was different. We need to attack affordability, not just from the perspective of, ending this war in Iran, reopen the Strait of Hormuz, end these ridiculous tariffs. Let's put some real price controls on prescription drugs because we pay for the research that actually helped create them. We shouldn't be paying more than everybody else in the world for the drugs that we helped get designed. We can do those things, but we also need to people need to actually make a wage, y'all. Mm-hmm. A real wage. Don't have these people out here working and not getting paid. One of the things that I'm proudest of is unions like 32BJ, SEIU 32BJ, and SEIU 1991. The unions that are supporting me, working families, people who work at hotels, people who work at the airport, people who empty garbage. They actually, and they've been following, Unite Here. Mm-hmm. They've been following politics and public service mind for a while. That they're supporting me. They're out there walking door to door for me because no matter what anyone ever says, they're like, no, he's for working people. And we know it because when this big company fired this man because his wife got cancer, he needed to take time off. He told them if they didn't rehire him, he broke their permit. They wouldn't be working at the airport. We know it because when the state tried to make unions illegal, he was the person who designed the cover for us legally so we could still exist here in the county. We know it because when these developers came here and they said, hey, we want to build this, he said, hey, only if you have a labor peace agreement. If you don't have a labor peace agreement, we don't even have to have a meeting about this. They know this because every time somebody was there, they needed somebody to stand up. I didn't just stand up. I designed the strategy that helped them win. And that's not a story I'm telling. That's a story they're telling. That's a story they're telling when they walk door to door. That's a story they're telling on their social media. That's what I did. Because I understand what it is for people to work and not have enough. When I'm in college and I'm working at Walmart night receiving, but living in my car because FP&L has fired my father because they didn't have a union and they wanted to get rid of everybody over 50. And so I couldn't afford tuition and rent. But I was stubborn. I wasn't coming back home. I chose tuition. And I'm gonna stay in my car until I figure this out. I remember that, so I understand the importance of people actually being able to collectively bargain. I understand that. I understand the importance of having some place to live, being secure in your housing. I understand the importance of when kids are in college, man, just because we send these kids to college don't mean it's easy. They still need help. We need to address Pell Grants. Pell Grants need to actually affect, and reflect what it actually takes to be in college. We can't pay everything. Sure, you can have a job, but we want them to do well, right? That's what we want. Why wouldn't we invest in things like that? And so I understand that, and it's my lived experiences that actually inform how I make policy. And when you go on my website, you kind of see that. Like you see it when I talk about, when I talk about transportation, rapid mass transit, because I usually go to law school. Listen, I have a policy platform on my website that talks about the CARE Act. And the CARE Act addresses the issue of parents who have special needs kids who have become adults. Well, when you're a parent, you think about your children all the time. But when you have a special needs child, you think about it differently. Because you're their lifeline. You're their caregiver. And the natural order of things is that children outlive parents. What will happen with them when you're gone? So I wrote federal policy to design around that. Have someone with a life plan, someone who actually coordinates across all departments, Social Security, Medicare, when it becomes time, Medicaid, HUD, how their housing looks, how their occupational things look. Like, we can do that. Millions of Americans are dealing with this. And it's not just parents who are taking care of kids. It's gotten to the point where my generation are the kids who are taking care of the parents also. How do we have those life plans to actually ensure that not only that they're cool, but they have as best quality of life as they could? I think about that for children. When I rolled it out, I was talking to this lady, and she's one of the teachers. She's a special education teacher. And she just breaks down, she's crying. She says, because someone finally sees us. They see what this is. Like, we can do better. Like, we can do better. And so I am committed to us doing better. And the resolve I bring to something is this. Look, you have people out there who love me. You have people out there who don't like me at all. But when I set my mind to something, I'm all in. I don't tell you I'm going to do something that I'm not going to do. I'm committed to us being better as a country, and I'm willing to go work to do that. I'll work within my caucus with Democrats. I'll work with Republicans to do that because their kids and their parents have the same issues and the same concerns. Look, one statistic always jumps out at me, and it's really two parts of it, but the most Republican city, I think, in the country, is the city of Hialeah. The most affordable CARE Act registrants in the country is the city of Hialeah. What that tells you is Republicans need health care too, y'all. They need health care too. Let's have the conversation about our common needs. And to the extent that we can't talk or get it done with their representatives, let's have a conversation with their constituents. I'm okay going and talking to your constituents about you voting against this, and this is how it would help you. Listen, one of the things I did when I was in the county trying to get stuff passed that would benefit our community, I would pull the numbers about how it affect their community. And so when you vote against this, you need to know you're hurting your folks too.
Votes too, yeah.
You need to hurt your folks too.
Mm-hmm.
And so that conversation normally adds a different perspective.
So because I wish we could sit for a whole, because I be wanting to pick your brain on stuff, you know what I mean? But since we can't, I want you to give the people a reason, or the reason why they should vote for you in this upcoming election.
I'll get it done.
District.
No, I'll get it done. Listen, every task you gave me, when we were in Miami Gardens, things that you thought to be impossible, you gave it to me and I got it done. I'm proud that Frederica's endorsing me, but I'm even prouder because I know that she was actually watching. She knows everybody in the race, and what she said was, everybody talks, but you've actually got it done. You actually worked and got it done. You showed results for our community. The person who's in the office doing the job right now knows what it requires, understands all the people who are there. She says that she's seen in me someone who can actually go to Washington and get things done for you. And what I promise you is this. I will work unceasingly. I will continue to go until we solve the problems that actually are addressing all of us, are concerning all of us, are plaguing all of us. Because I understand what's at stake. I will get it done for you. Okay.
Y'all heard it here first. On Q&A, questions need answers. I hope we answered all questions today, okay? All right. If you haven't already, follow, like, and subscribe on YouTube. Q&A, questions need answers. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram. On Instagram, we'll join Q&A. You can find us and just support us, man, the best way we can. We tried to get to all the candidates that we could on a shoestring budget that we could. We appreciate all our folks who reached out to us and candidates who reached out to us to actually come on the platform. And I hope you're able to make the decision for yourselves, because we got everybody. We tried to get everybody. If we didn't, and we missed some folks, I'm sorry. It's the best we could do with scheduling and everything else, but I hope we did the best we could and making sure you can make the choice on who you believe is the best to represent us. So see y'all later. Peace out. We got more interviews coming.